Good morning, everybody. Welcome back to Professional Writing. I'm Professor Mike, and today we're going to talk about your methods and materials, but more specifically, I want to talk about some other things that are involved in your materials and methods. Your materials and methods, I want you to remember, they are not strictly like an instruction manual, okay? For your methods and materials, you're going to be describing everything that you did. Don't use any strange language or anything like that. And that's why I want to talk about clarity in writing, okay? It's important to choose your words and your phrases, everything that, all the possible words so that the reader doesn't, misunderstand what you're saying, okay? Some words have 2, 3 different meanings. You need to be very, very clear to your reader, okay? Let's get right into today's lesson then. We're going to go right into the clarity in writing. Okay, so clarity, of course, is the clearness, okay? Like jasnost, okay? You need to be exact. Like I said in the previous shot, you need to choose the words, okay? Because many words, like if you go to any dictionary, either in an application, Slovnik SK, for example, every time I go to that, there are 100 different words for one word. Okay, so you need to actually choose the best word. Okay, so that the reader will understand the meaning of the context fully. All right, then. So the first thing that we're going to do is I'm going to show you a video by Grammar Squirrel. Okay, Grammar Squirrel, is amazing. I really love her. And this video is a great way to describe clarity in writing.
Here at UBC, as part of an ambitious project involving instructors, staff, and talking squirrels, we are developing videos to help you with your writing skills. Because communicating science effectively is an incredibly important part of being a good scientist. Grammar Squirrel is finishing off a piece of science writing in which she's reviewing a complex journal article as part of an assignment. She really wants her work to grab attention and sound scholarly and scientific. And she thinks that using complex English and intellectual sciencey sounding words will help. She concludes her piece with what she hopes is a real bang. She says, notwithstanding the questionable gravity of the author's nuanced application of the neonicotinoid pesticide, his analysis suggests it will nevertheless improve Deseris suppression of non-endemic species. And she hands in her assignment, expecting to receive an impressive grade. 2 weeks later, Grammar Squirrel eagerly grabs her marked paper. But things haven't turned out quite as she had hoped or expected. Grammar Squirrel reads the comments closely. Her teacher says she needs to work on 4 things. She needs to write more succinctly, use simpler language, remove or explain technical jargon, and look out for redundant words.
Okay, I just want to stop it right there. Succinct writing, this is your clarity. Succinct means writing that is clear and simple, okay? So you're taking language that we saw just a moment ago that was extremely difficult, and we're going to try and compact it, okay, so that all the phrases, these two would be together, okay? They would be simpler words that are more understandable, okay? So you don't need an extremely long sentence, but we can shorten it with words that are easier to remember. And as well as jargon, okay? Unless your paper is written for a specific journal where the readers are only going to be people from your field of study, from your area, then of course you can leave the jargon because they're going to know exactly what you're talking about. However, okay, na druhej strane, if they don't know what you're talking about, if your paper is written for, new researchers, university students, high school students, people who are very new to the field, then you're probably going to want to remove some of the, the jargon, the technicus terminus, okay, and put simplified words here, okay, replace it. And of course, avoid these redundant words, okay, words that have nothing to do with what you're writing about, or you're repeating them, okay, anything like that.
In her writing. Firstly, an upset and angry grammar squirrel takes some time to cool off and relax a little bit, just to make sure that her mind is clear and that her perspective is realistic before she revisits her assignment. Where did I go wrong? She wonders, as lots of questions pop into her head. With her focus regained, she decides to see a couple of experts to help her understand where she did go wrong.
One of the most common misconceptions about writing, especially science writing, is that you have to use complicated, intellectual-sounding words in order to impress the reader. In fact, the opposite is true. Being an effective communicator means that you are able to very clearly explain information to your audience. Writing lengthy, complicated sentences that use fancy words often just shows that you know how to use a thesaurus, and not that you understood what you were writing about. Think of it this way. Why use 10 words to explain something when you could simply use 5? Why?
Okay, so this is a really important point, okay? If you want to confuse your audience, use those big words and that language that, has, you need a dictionary just to figure out the context of what they're saying, okay? So you have to be careful then. So try to avoid those complex, those difficult words, okay? And wordy language, okay? Wordy, okay, meaning full of words, okay? So why use 10 words to explain something when you can, shorten it to just 5 words?
I try to elucidate or illuminate a concept when you can simply explain it. The good news is that you will make your sentences more succinct just by limiting your use of fancy words and phrases. But to be sure that you are not using too many words, pay special attention to your descriptions and your transitions. For example, why say, despite the fact that, when you can simply use despite by itself to mean the same thing?
Well, that all makes sense. So now it's time for Grammar Squirrel to go and see the second expert to find out how she can deal with jargon.
Unfortunately, science is one of those subjects where jargon inevitably creeps in, and this can make it very difficult for the reader to interpret. And because of this, I think this is why it's very important as a writer you try to avoid or at least be aware of where jargon comes in. So think of it this way. When you read a scientific journal, you either really know your stuff or you have to look stuff up in a dictionary or do your homework. And ultimately, when you actually write for the public, you kind of want to avoid having to force the reader to do those things. So this is a big part of, sort of thinking of a strategy when dealing with jargon generally. Okay, so let's use an example. If I were to tell you that most proteins in the body were polymeric, is that a good word to use? What would that mean exactly? If you were to look it up in a dictionary, you would actually find out that it means something to the effect of having multiple units or repeating units. If you're writing a piece and you have a choice of using that word or not, it would actually make a lot more sense to just go with the description instead, because it's much easier for the reader to get that. It's also worth pointing out that sometimes the jargon in question is not so much a descriptor kind of word, like a really precise way of describing something. The jargon is actually a concept. And I think it's also useful to realize that sometimes explaining these types of jargon, it's really a great idea to use something like a metaphor or a sweet analogy that just kind of fits it perfectly. I found that really useful in some of the stuff I've read. Don't forget, however, that sometimes the concept, the jargon, is actually quite important. So, for example, polymeric is something that comes up over and over again. It's actually probably a good thing to, at some point, refer to it anyway, like actually say polymeric as in this or that. And that way the reader will have something to fall back on as they actually go through the piece.
Now, Grammar Squirrel is just wondering how she can eliminate unnecessary words.
The easiest way to read your work and sort of take note that you are being as precise as possible with your writing is to look out for redundant words. So in essence, this is just kind of reading through the sentence and just seeing if the sentence actually stay the same even if you take certain words out. So a couple good examples are phrases like entirely unique or might potentially. If you think about a phrase like entirely unique, there's redundancy there because something is either unique or it isn't. And with might potentially, those two words, the might and the potentially, actually have a similar meaning. So again, you can do away with one of those words. So taken together, if you do avoid jargon and sort of look out for redundancy, as well as just write more succinctly and just in a more simple way, your writing stands to improve overall.
Okay, I'm just going to pause it right there. Okay, this is a really great point. Okay, removing all that unnecessary stuff will improve your overall grammar. Okay, making things simple and clear is the most effective way of transmitting or getting your message across to the reader, okay? But you can leave this until your edit, okay? So if you remember your outline, okay? So the outline, osnyoba, when you begin your paper, just write it. Take 24 hours for fresh eyes and, do the edit afterwards, okay? So your edit will, take out all those mistakes, all those redundant words that are unnecessary.
Grammar Squirrel, fresh from her trip to see the experts, rereads her assignment. And when she gets to her concluding statement, she realizes where she went wrong and rewrites the same sentence to address the 4 points of her writing that she was advised to consider. Doesn't her conclusion sound better now she simply says, the difference in the way the author applied the pesticide was only small, but it should help stop non-native species spreading. And, having gained this valuable new perspective, she's really looking forward to her next essay.
Okay, so Grammar Squirrel basically gave you a description of how to use succinct writing, okay? So this is to be, short, kratki, I know the word, presny, okay? So you want to be precise, use words that are not going to confuse the reader, okay? I mean, we're all a little bit, I don't know how to say it, everybody seems to have their own way of understanding things. Most of us will understand what you're saying, although there is usually that 5 or 10% of the population of readers who might be a little bit confused, okay? So it's very important to choose the words that you're going to use in your writing. Okay, so she said use succinct, okay? Succinct words, okay? Being precise and everything. Be careful of jargon, okay? Wordiness, okay? You don't want to use too many words like despite the fact when it's enough to say despite, okay? And of course, be careful about redundancy. Redundant, meaning those words, such as despite the fact, and so on, that we don't really need to use, or they, even words that have nothing to do, with your research, okay? But you can you can leave that to the edit. I'm just going to go to the book for a few minutes here. You can find everything. Actually, I got to scroll it. It's actually on page 32, and we'll go to that right now. And I'll just want to explain a little bit further what I'm talking about here. Okay, so on page 32, all right. Okay, so as I mentioned earlier on the paper and everything, just beginning the paper is extremely difficult, okay? Even, the materials and methods are really, really hard because it takes up a lot of your time and energy, okay? But be careful, okay? The methods and the materials, we don't use them so much as like an instruction manual. Rather, it's a report of everything that you did, okay? So some of the other sections might be considered as add-ons, okay? It's like the ends of, the books, okay? So here's my introduction, okay, here's my conclusion, and the methods and the materials are in the middle, okay? But be careful, of course. Every section of the academic research paper or the journalistic article is important. Okay, I want to show you though a few things here. Always make a first draft. Remember, you can do the edit, and always use basic verbs. Okay, you can use things as to get, to have, and to find out. Okay, Sie steht. Okay. And try to use the simple past, okay? You know, so we got, or, you know, we had, okay? Or we found out, all right? You can replace them later when you do the edit with specific verbs, okay? Be careful about the jargon, okay? The terminology and so on. And of course, you need to use synonyms, which are extremely important. You don't want to have these repetitive, opakující language. Now, in the book, okay, this is an example of some materials and methods, or methods and materials from a high school student named Vicky. Actually, Vicky is a university student now, but when she was in secondary school, in gymnasium, at the lycée, she had to do a paper, and she chose to do something on the absorbency of towels, okay, the uterak or the osushka. And basically she talked about absorbency and, you know, how some towels were washed with avivage. I don't even know how to say avivage in English. That's so funny. I've been here in Slovakia too long. Fabric softener, that's what we call it, fabric softener. Anyway, so in the book though, okay, I have everything here used with linking words. Okay, so if you are part of the presentations course, earlier on today, I sent out a video and describing, you know, listing words. Okay, so for example, here we have firstly and the next step or the next step. Okay, it goes on, the next task, then, okay, and the last things to do. These are everything she wrote, and I just highlighted how she you know, how she sequenced everything, how she put everything in order, okay? She also used, if you look at the bold here, okay, to test absorbency effect in a simple way, okay, a lot of it she used, she put it into the past tense, okay, was designed, was made up, and put down, okay? Some of it, of course, is the present simple. If you remember the University of Melbourne using, you know, the Feek and Swale handout that I sent to you, using appropriate tenses. So the methods and materials, okay, most of it is used in this context where we use the past simple, but we also use the passive voice, the tripnirod, okay? So she went and changed everything. Instead of saying that, you know, we designed it. Well, I don't think she used that one here, but she said a basic experimental procedure was designed, okay? And she went and listed it, okay? Here, she also listed her materials, a terry cloth towel, Swedish microfiber cloth, polyester stockings, water timer, 2 wash basins, fabric softener, avivage, and scoop. Scoop is like a little lopachka, I think you call it, lopta. I don't even know how do you call it in Slovak. Okay, it's a small shovel, So she's got everything written there. Okay. All right then, so let's have a look here. So she used these really effective linking words and phrases, okay? You know, you can use things like next, last, and finally. These are all the listing words here, first or firstly. It really doesn't matter which one you choose, okay? If you want to talk about more addition, okay, instead of just saying also, okay, great words are furthermore, okay, and moreover. I don't know if I have it here. Okay, I'll have to put that into the next next edition of this book, okay? All right then. here are some more that you can find. Okay. These are words for contrasting. Sorry, that's a spelling mistake. Preklep, there should be an S there. However, nevertheless, nonetheless, as well. But try to use words like despite. Nevertheless is good too, okay? In spite of or despite the fact, maybe a little bit too much, okay? So if you're contrasting, okay, where, you know, you have one point and then another point that's completely opposite, okay, you can say on the other hand, let me get down there. Where are we here? Okay, on the other hand, sorry. All right, not, again, never, please never say on the other side. Okay, that doesn't exist in English. It's always on the other hand. And you can always also use on the contrary, And these two words here, while and whereas, like pričom or pokial, okay, meaning, you know, something does this while another thing does that. So they're in contrast to each other. And if you're comparing, okay, so for example, if you have data that is similar, you can start the sentence with similarly, okay, podobne, like likewise, podobne, or also, okay, it is addition, but you can also use also when comparing two things. All right. So in her methods and materials, okay, replace the words in red. This is just an exercise, but I wouldn't worry about it too much though. But I want to look here at this passive voice, okay? So it's always recommended, if you remember last week's video, Kevin from Wordvice, he said that it's good to use a mixture of passive and the active, okay? Now the passive voice is when something is being done to the object, and active voice is when, you know, we or a person, okay, is doing something. So it emphasizes the person rather than the object receiving the action. So we analyzed samples rather than samples were analyzed. So passive voice, active voice, okay. Now, these are very clear and they're livelier, and a lot of publications, they advise these authors to use the active voice in the writing, but you don't want to use too much of one and not enough of another, okay? All right, so don't write it entirely in the active voice, okay? And if you want to use active voice, you know, be careful of things like I, okay, we, rather use like, you know, the authors or our team, okay, for example. All right, when we make the passive voice is you take the object, you take the verb to be. So for example, up here, samples were, okay, this is the passive voice. In the past tense, okay, the samples were, and then you use something called the past participle, the pričastye, samples were analyzed. Okay, so for example here, you have, these are just classic examples that I generally like to use in the classroom, but they're very easy to remember. I clean the room every day, and the passive voice, the room is cleaned every day. Okay, great. Okay, so look at some more of these examples then. So you also need to be careful about sentence structure. All right, so we do have rules, okay, that are maybe a little bit different than in Slovak, in French, Italian, other languages. All right, if you look at this example here, in the city of Bratislava in 1998, were recorded high levels of pollution, okay? This is also preklep, it should be two L's, pollution, P-O-L-L. I apologize, there are many, many mistakes in this book here. All right, this is wrong, Okay, the reason that it's wrong is that you need to actually start off with the subject, okay, and then the verb or the activity, the action, and then you can go to place and you can go to time. So we can say that the highest levels of pollution, which is the subject, okay, were recorded. That's the verb. Remember, it's passive voice, Trpni in Bratislava in 1998, okay? Where and when are considered to be less important information. But sometimes, though, okay, sometimes you might want to put it, you know, at the beginning of the sentence, okay? Sometimes that does happen, though, okay? So if it is important, okay, that place and time, they should be placed at the very beginning of the sentence. Okay, so for example, pollution levels were recorded in Trnava, Malicky, and Bratislava in the 1990s. Okay, so this is, you know, we have the subject. This is classic subject, verb, okay, place and time. But we can also say in the city of Bratislava, all right, now this is more important, where the highest levels of pollution were recorded in 1998. I wouldn't put them together in the city of Bratislava in 1998 like this one, okay, but I would put one of them, okay, so you could start off, if you think it's important that in 1998, then yes, you can start off in 1998, the highest levels of pollution were recorded in the city of Bratislava, okay? All right, so that's up to you. If you want to emphasize that place or time, like a date is more important, then you can do that. But the general rule or the general model is up here, okay? All right, so there are some examples and things like that you can do from the book. You know, it's up to you, really. I'm not too picky about it, but I want to go down here and look at the materials, okay? Because one thing that's really common for every scientist is that they have kind of a poor understanding of the equipment, either in their laboratory or what they bring with them in their field of work, okay? Maybe I wrote this. Yeah, I don't think I wrote it as best as possible, but instead of having an understanding, I know that scientists understand their equipment, but I don't think they understand, you know, what is most important for the reader to know, okay? So you can write down everything that you use in your research, like a spade, okay, the shovel, okay, the scoop, you know, like to you know, like it's like a spoon, like a lyžica. Okay, the lopachka, I think. Yeah, I don't know how to say it. Okay, you would write down all that kind of stuff and everything. Okay, you can write down all the functions of everything. Like the spade is used for digging rocks. You can also put them all into the passive voice. Okay, but you have to be really careful. Like maybe the spade isn't the most important material that you want to list. Okay, so you have to be very, very critical about, you know, what you want to use. Now, when you describe your materials, okay, try to describe them separately, okay? If the study is complicated, then, you know, it kind of saves space this way, okay? And include, you know, those specialized chemicals or biological materials, any equipment or supplies that are, you don't really find them in a laboratory, okay? So you don't want to say like the test tube, okay, or the pipette or the beaker. Everybody kind of knows what these things are, okay? I mean, centrifuge, spectrophotometers, if they are important and relevant to the experiment, then yes, you can use them, okay? And of course, you can mention them, okay, in the methods, but you don't have to always list it as, you know, as part of the materials. Okay, I'm just going to go back to one more thing here. Hang on a second. All right, before I go further, okay, have a look at this here then, all right? So this example begins with describing the methods with the materials used, okay? This is an interesting style of paper, okay? So they've got the points or all the sections listed in numbers. Remember, some publishers also want a table of contents, and some publishers, you know, want your paper to be ordered in this way, okay? So probably number one, okay, was your introduction, and two is, you know, that would be your material and methods, okay? So here we have, I don't know if you can read it. I'm going to try and go a little bit clearer. And I guess I have to bring the, maybe what have I done? All right, I don't know if that's clear enough to you or not then, okay. But this is a great example that all experiments were performed, okay. As I said, Tripnirod, okay, was sorghum bicolor. They've also listed, you know, the name of the manufacturer or the supplier. Okay, grains were sterilized. Okay, again, Tripnirod in sodium hypochlorite for 20 minutes and so on. Okay, this is a combination of the materials and methods. Okay, for determining SI concentration. Okay, so we have three kinds here. We have cultivation of plant, determination of SI concentration, and RNA extraction. So the author has separated everything here, you know. So these are the materials and the methods that they use, okay? So the root and shoot parts of 14-day-old plants were collected. Plant samples of 0.5 grams were weighted. You know, for 2 hours after cooling down. So everything has been sequenced here, okay? So to determine something after it was cooled down, the samples were then, okay, just like Vicky said, then we did this, okay? And the content of SI was carried out by means of flame atomic, whatever it is, absorption, spectrometry, or spectrometry, I guess it's pronounced. And then finally, the author talks about RNA analysis, okay? And even to go even a little bit further, they're even talking about how the samples were collected from the primary roots and so on. Okay, here's another one. This one's probably easier for most of you to understand. This one takes place here in Slovakia, okay? So it talks about the study area, the location. Okay, then how the sampling was done. So even when, okay, sampling, right? Remember, this is you know, the classic, you know, the classic example of our word structure. So we start off with the subject. We have the verb, okay, in the passive voice. All right, and then we have the date, okay. We know already it was taken in the River Vach. It was already determined in the study area. Okay, and then all the materials are actually listed here as well. So using a modified Cerberus sampler, it talks about the size, mesh size, okay, 70% alcohol that was used, okay. Talks about the individuals, you know, these are the samples that were collected, okay. They're subjected to morphological description. Anything like that. Even still, there were some environmental variables that were required to actually, you know, put into the methods and materials, okay? So during the sampling, water temperature, oxygen saturation, all this kind of stuff were taken into consideration, okay? They had to be done, okay? Talks about concentration of phosphates and things like that. And of course, always, you know, always try to, you know, you have to specify the name of the company. Okay, so a Merck, SpectraQuant, okay, portable colorimeter. All right, that stuff has to be mentioned as well. I'm just going to take a moment and show you a video of some more of those linking words and phrases. This is only a 2-minute video, but it really clarifies the difference between, you know, using especially contrasting words like, you know, like how, despite and in spite of and however and things like that. anyways, let's go right into that video here.
Hi, this is Finn with another BBC English class, and today we're looking at linking words of contrast. What are they? Things like despite and although. They're really just fancy words for but. Okay, so let's look at a few of these and the differences between how to use them in just 90 seconds. Look this way. Here are our lovely linking words of contrast. How do we use them? Well, look at these sentences. He earns a small salary. He loves to wear expensive clothes. They're actually clauses, yeah? They function as clauses. And only one group of these linking words can go with clauses. Which are they? This group here. Let's move that to one side. So, we can put these either at the beginning or the middle, in front of this clause or this clause. So have a look. Though he earns a small salary, he loves to wear expensive clothes. Or, although, or even though he earns a small salary, he loves to wear expensive clothes. Why not? Okay. Or we could put them in the middle. He earns a small salary, although he loves to wear expensive clothes. Right. Now, what about the other two? Despite and in spite of. Well, these go in front of a noun or in front of a gerund. So, we've got a couple of those here. His small salary and having a small...
Okay, so he said that they go either in front of a gerund, okay? And a gerund is the ing, okay, of when you take a verb and create the verb or transform the verb into a noun, okay? So it's that ing forma.
Small salary. So, let's have a look at it this time. He loves to wear expensive clothes, okay, despite or in spite of
ing
having a small salary, or despite or in spite of his small salary. And we have just run out of time. I did that very quickly, so do go to our website, bbclearningenglish.com, to find this program and look at the...
Okay, guys, I don't think I'm going to go on to the describing the graphs and charts and stuff like that. I think I'm going to leave that for next time, because that actually has more to do with your discussions, your discussion section and describing your results. And so I don't want to go and do too much of that for today. All right, I want to say thank you to everybody for sending your abstract to me as well. I mean, you guys did really, really well. I'm really impressed. I will be sending feedback, okay? So some of you have been asking, can you send me some feedback? I have a kind of my own method. I like to collect all the abstracts at once. Then I spend a day or something like just going through all the abstracts, looking for everything. I build up a tempo and then I write the feedback and I send it back to you at once, okay? So today, October 22nd, was your deadline. But I mean, don't panic. If you, as I've always said, these are crazy times that we're living in with COVID-19 and any day I'm expecting to be sent home because of the lockdown. We might all be sent home for a lockdown. Who knows what's going to happen? Everything is a little bit unclear these days. So if you don't have your abstract ready, don't panic. Okay, send me an email and just tell me basically when you might have it ready or just so I know when I can expect it from you. But for everybody else, thank you for sending it to me early, and thank you for sending it to me on time, okay? Anyways, next week we're going to talk about the discussions, the results, and the conclusion. I really want to finish up, all this talk about doing scientific academic papers, and then we're going to have Dušičky, which is All Saints Day. And basically in November, I want to start looking at those, CVs, okay, the curriculum vitae, letter writing to publishers, writing for funding, cover letters, and things like that, as well as your poster. And I'd like to do all that in November, basically, okay? All right, guys, take care of yourselves. Have a great, great weekend, I suppose, and a successful week next week as well. So we'll see you then. Okay, bye-bye.